Good morning, years 5 and 6. This morning we're going to look at percentages. So we're going to start off by looking at the sign. If you look at the bottom of the bottom of the slide, you'll see that this is the percent sign. So when we see that symbol, that means percent. Now, percent relates to the number of parts per 100. So per means out of and cent 100. So when we think of percent, we think of how many out of 100. So let's look at some diagrams to help explain this. So here's a 10 by 10 grid made of 100 small equal squares. So if I was thinking about the number of parts per 100 shaded, what percentage does each square represent? Well, in this diagram here, there is one square out of 100 shaded in. So 1 out of 100 is 1%. If I look at the next diagram, this time, how many squares have I got shaded in? Well, I know that each column is 10, so if I count it across 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, I've got 90 squares shaded in. 90 out of 100 is 90%. Let me just go back, 90%. Okay, let's look at the next diagram together. So this time, if I were to count the squares, I'll give you a moment to count them. How many squares out of 100 are shaded in this time? Okay, so there's 20 shaded in, 20 out of 100, or I could say 20%. Now, this time, we can count the squares that are shaded in. Again, it doesn't matter where the squares are, which ones are shaded in. We just need to count how many is shaded because it is 100 square. It's a 100 grid. So if we count how many are shaded in, well, there's 3 rows of 10 shaded in, so that's 30. So 30 out of 100, or 30%. And this time, a little bit trickier because they're not complete columns or rows shaded in. But if we were to count them, we would see that 74 out of 100 are shaded in, or 74%. And finally, a trickier diagram to shade in. We can count the numbers of complete rows that are filled in because we know that there are 10 on each row. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows filled in. So that's 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. So 55 squares are shaded in, 55 out of 100, which equals 55%. Okay, these diagrams are slightly trickier. So this time it's the same grid, but we've just made it out of 10 equal rectangles. So imagine that this was a 100 grid and you filled in a whole column of the grid. Could you work out what percent is filled in here? So it would actually be 10%. And there you can see on the diagram, one whole column filled in, 10 out of 100. So 10% shaded in. And if I show you another diagram, again, it's the same 100 grid, but it's not split in to the 100 squares. But can you have a look, can you work out by looking at it? So half of it is shaded in and half is 50 out of 100, which would be 50%. Here you can see that 1/4 is shaded in. We know that 1/4 of 100 is 25. So this time there's 25% of the grid shaded in. Okay. We're going to stop there and you're going to have a go at the questions on the resource sheet on the website. So good luck. Hope you enjoyed the introduction to percentages. Take care.